So now we're adding a third piece. We studied in the first video today, in the first section, what the A does. The second video, the second section, we figured out what the B does. And now in this video, what's the C gonna do for us? So we know the amplitude is the absolute value of A. We know the B controls the period. The period is 2 pi divided by B. So what is then that C there? That's called the shift or displacement. Shift or displacement. It depends which book you grab there. And that's defined as negative C divided by B. So let's say you were given this problem, graph y equals, I'll make it simple, A is 1 here, sine 2x plus pi over 4. That means the number here is what? 1. Let's identify the pieces. What is my amplitude? For this problem, that's the absolute value of what? A, which is the absolute value of 1, and that's 1. The period. Two pi over B. What is B? B is the number in front of X. 2 pi over 2, which is what? Pi. The shift or displacement. It's negative C over B. Negative, and what's C here? Pi over 4, and you're going to divide it by 2. In case you forgot your math, that's negative pi over 4 divided by 2. That's 2 over 1. How do you do division? You keep the first, change the division to multiplications, and you flip the second one. That's what? Negative pi over 8. Keep, change, and flip when you're doing division. Keep the first, change the division to multiplication, flip it. I call it KFC. It's really KCF. But everyone knows KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken. So just when you think of that, think of keep, change, and flip. So I'm going to graph that. And what does that displacement tells me? Normally, we graph in a sine function. Normally, the sine function starts where? Starts as 0. But not today, not in this example. Then where is it going to start? It's going to start backward right there, negative, so it's down here. It's going to start at negative pi over 8. That's where it's going to start from. And it's a sine function. It's going to end there. The height is 1, and this is what? Negative 1. The question now, what is that end value? Right here. What is that value? The end. How do we figure what that number is? What is it?
Pi.
Nope. Why did you say pi there? Because the pi is, yep. How long to go? The pi is actually how long to go from here to there. So really the end is going to be the start plus the period. Where do you start from? Add to it the period. That will give you where you're going to end at. So my starting point is what? Negative pi over 8. And my period is what? Pi or pi over 1. So if you're going to add them, you need a common denominator, which is what? 8. So that would be 8 over 8. So this will be what? Negative pi over 8 plus 8 pi over 8. Since the bottoms are the same, that's 7 pi over 8. So in this example, the graph will end at 7 pi over 8. So when they graph these, you and I don't have the technique on the software to graph them on the computer there. They'll give you 4 or 5 graphs to look at. So look and see which one of them looks like this. It might be 2 or 3 of them. But look and see where they start from. Do they start from negative pi over 8? Do they end at 7 pi over 8? The problem with that is they don't just give you one full cycle. They'll give you like this. So you have to look at that value where it crosses the x-axis and say, okay, is that number negative pi over 8? Is this number 7 pi over 8? Does it go as high as 1? Does it go as low as negative 1? If the answer is yes, 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 and yes, that is your graph. If they go starts at negative pi over 8 and ends at pi, that's not your graph. Let me try another one. Let's graph this function. Y equals 2 sine 3x minus pi. Let's write everything about this function. My amplitude is the absolute value of A. A is what? 2. What's the absolute value of 2? 2. My period is 2 pi over B. Do we know what B is? B is that number. The number in front of X. That would be what? 2 pi over 3. The shift, displacement, negative C over B. C is what? Negative pi. And B is 3. That's pi over 3, positive. If the shift is positive, you start to the right of the y-axis. If it's negative, you start to the left. So your function is a sine function, but it's not going to start from 0. It's going to start from pi over 3. Right there. It's going to start from that point. And it's a sine function. It's going to look like this. How high is it going to go? 2. And down here, how low? negative 2. Again, it doesn't stop here. It keeps going. I'm only watching one cycle there. So the cycle begins at pi over 3. Where is it going to end at? Let's look at the end point. So the end point, I just finished saying, is the start plus the period. What is the start? Pi over 3. Add to it the period. And what's my period here? 2 pi over 3. Good news, the bottom is the same. What's pi plus 2 pi? 3 pi, so what is it going to be? So it's going to end right here at pi. But that's where one full cycle, if I have to study that, have to zoom in on it, it's right there. Let's try this one. Do a couple more examples, then we're done. Graph y equals 1/2. I'll do cosine, we didn't do cosine. Cosine, we'll do a lot of fractions here. 1/2 x minus pi over 6. Pi over 6, not c. So my a, what's a equal to here? A is 1/2. So what's my amplitude? The absolute value of 1/2, which is 1/2. What's b equal to? That 1/2. Not this one, that one. I should have made them different. That 1/2. So it's 1/2. That will tell me what the period is. 2 pi divided by b, and b is 1/2. Again, dividing by half, the same as multiplication by 2 over 1, which is 4 pi. The shift, or c, let's define c first. What's c here? It's negative pi over 6. So the displacement or shift, it's equal to negative c over b. That's negative c is what? Negative pi over 6 divided by b, which is 1/2. What's a negative negative? That's a positive. Pi over 6 divided by 1/2, the same as multiplication by 2 over 1. So when you simplify that, that's pi over 3. Notice that's a positive shift again, which means shift to the right. Pi over 3 is somewhere here. Again, this is not a sine, this is a cosine function. the cosine starts high, like the Karate Kid. So you're going to start from here and goes down like this and back up there. And again, it doesn't stop here. You can continue with it if you want to. Continue with it. I'm only interested in one cycle there. So it begins at pi over 3. It ends, we'll figure that out shortly. How high is it going to go? 1/2, that's my amplitude. Down here is what? Negative 1/2. And what is the end here? It's the start, which is pi over 3. Add to it the period. Add to it the period. What's the period? 4 pi, or 4 pi over 1. So if you're going to add them, what do you need? Common denominator, which is 3. What's pi plus 12 pi? 13 pi over 3. So again, if you're looking at different graphs on the paper or on the screen, look for the one that has a peak to the right of this axis, not to the left, because the shift will be wrong if it's on the left. To the right, that's where the peak is. Make sure the peak value starts at pi over 3. The other peak value lands at 13 pi over 3. Look at the y value. Make sure it's a half. Make sure it's a negative half. If you get all these things, then you get the right graph. Let me try one more. One more. Graph y equals negative 2 cosine 2x plus pi over 6. What is my amplitude? Well, let me define A first. What's A here? Isn't that negative 2? So my amplitude now is the absolute value of A, which is the absolute value of negative 2, and that's a 2. What's B equal to? That number. Just 2. B. You give me the period now. It's 2 pi over B, which is 2 pi over 2. And that's pi. And what's C? C is pi over 6. That's this number. That will give me the displacement or the shift. It's negative C over B. Is the negative, what's C? Pi over 6 divided by 2. That's negative pi over 6. When you divide by 2, that's the same as multiplication by a half. Negative pi over 4. Displacement is negative. I'm going to start here. Negative pi over 4. Now it's a cosine function. Cosine starts high and it goes down, but there's a negative in the front. That's going to flip it. It's going to start down here. It's going to go right there. So this is a negative 2 here. This is a 2 here. Make sure when you look at the starting point for that cosine, when you look at that peak value, make sure it says negative pi over 4. Make sure it says 2 on the top, negative 2 on the bottom. And again, it doesn't stop here. I'm only showing you one piece of it. Let's look at this value, the end point. That end point, it's always the start plus the period. My start is negative pi over 4, and my period is what? Pi. So that's what? Negative pi over 4 plus, this will be 4 pi over 4. So where is it going to end at? Is it 3 pi over 4? So that's where that value should be. 3 pi divided by 4. Make sense?